Welcome to the live stream, guys. It has been a while. I know that I don't really stream all that much anymore, but I want to thank Ryan today for sponsoring this video. Appreciate you. I imagine most of you are drunk driving with Santa Claus right now, and Ms. Claus, is probably giving roadhead in the passenger seat or whatever. But I saw my family over Thanksgiving because we have a lot of birthdays around that time too, so including mine. So I did that, and so I am just on my lonesome for Christmas this year, and I'm very happy with that. Over here in Northwest Arkansas, it is going to be in the 70s and sunny today. So, and we've had this weather all week. Of course, once January 1st or 2nd hits, that's when, it's going to start getting cooler out here, but that's okay. It's to be expected. But you bet I am going to be outside today getting some sun and enjoying it. I never understood people who during the winter avoid going outside. I always, if the weather really is above 40 degrees, I'll be outside, and if it's sunny and it's not windy, I'll be outside shirtless getting sun. That, for me, I always get as much sun as I can without harming myself. As they say, the only way to the Father is through the Son, and I take that literally. So, and it's never really harmed me in my life. So anyways, what Ryan says, he says, "Hey, Soft-Spoken Shaman, I enjoyed watching your live streams in the past. I'm not too sure why you haven't streamed recently, but they were always really cozy streams." So I'll respond to that first. Yeah, man, I haven't streamed in a while, not because I don't want to. I've just been busy with other things. I've been busy. I crafted this bed and done some other things, around the house. You probably wouldn't be surprised how much time and how much energy all this takes. So at the end of the day, you just don't really want to. At the end of the day, after doing all this stuff, man, if I were to live stream or whatever, I'd be yawning throughout the whole thing. So it's nothing like that. Naturally, when you live a more contemplative life also, you kind of retreat away from platforms like this over time. And that's just kind of what happens naturally. It's an ebb and flow cycle sort of thing. So anyways, what Ryan had to say is, I'm going to paraphrase here. He basically said he's interested in the monastic life, monastery life, and he doesn't know for sure if he still wants to be part of society, so-called, anymore. He doesn't know if he wants to go after the normal milestones of making a pile of cash and having a family and all that stuff. So he just wanted me to kind of go off on this subject. So I will. The monastic life is pretty interesting. The way I view it, always for me, has always been to have one foot in one world and one foot in the other. And, some people might say, oh, you can't serve two masters. Sure, I guess, but I don't see the problem with it, You can be worldly and also retreat from it at the same time. It's just a mindset. I've visited a couple monasteries in my life, and I've had a good time. There was a Thai Buddhist monastery located where I was at in Yucca Valley, California, in the desert, that I went to a couple times. There was another one in Lucerne Valley, way, way deep out in the desert in California also. There was one in Arizona when I was over there. I've been to 2 in New Mexico. And there's also, maybe about an hour and a half, 2 hours from me, there is a monastery in Missouri, kind of not that far from Branson, I guess, that I plan on going to. I haven't gone there yet. It's a Trappist monastery. A lot of these Trappist monasteries, what they do to make enough money to support the monastery staying open and feeding the monks is they'll craft their own beer and they'll sell it. Trappist beer is known to be very good if that's your type of thing. There are many monasteries where you can visit either for the day or where you can stay overnight for a certain period of time. And, a lot of those accommodations, it's almost like a hostel. You can have group rooms, or you can have single rooms or little casitas or whatever. And a lot of it is not even like a certain set price. They give you kind of suggested donations. Many of these monasteries also, their whole thing is to treat everybody as if they are Christ or an angel or whatever. You know what I mean? That's their whole thing. So you're going to be treated very well when you go to a monastery. Very, very well. Better, I would say, when you go to a monastery, you're going to be treated better than if you go to a 5-star hotel. Now, I don't mean in terms of the amenities, so to speak. I mean, a 5-star hotel, you're going to get all the creature comforts. But in terms of human connection, you're going to be treated much better. Going to a monastery and talking with whatever monks are amongst you, or there's certain monks usually who will be in charge of liaising with the guests, and they're, I guess, a little bit more immune to the trappings of the worldly life, so it's not like you would be harming them in any way. They understand. And, a lot of monasteries, you are on beautiful grounds. You can take nature walks, either solitary or with your group or with monks. You can talk about whatever, it's almost, if you're considering going to therapy or going to, confess to a Catholic priest or whatever, I would almost recommend just go to a monastery of your choosing and go walk around the grounds and go talk to the people who live there. And you'll actually come away with probably a new lease on life. Now, of course, anytime you have a new lease on life, you got to make sure you understand what the terms are. So not everything's free, of course, and I'm not talking just monetarily. There's a lot of people who develop interest in having a monastic life and not doing their own thing, creating their own monastery. Like this house I built, I see this as my own personal monastery. A lot of people, they want to go to a pre-existing monastery and they want to plug into that life and live that way. You have to understand, a lot of monks, while they're very nice people, they are aware that many people are tire kickers in a sense. They're sick of modern life, but they don't want to give it up. They basically want to have all the trappings of modern life without having to work. And so a lot of them want to go to the monastery and they want to just have all their bills paid, have free food every day, be able to just hang out with their boys, And for that, yeah, they'll give up sex, or so they say, maybe. That's the one thing maybe they'll give up. So you have to understand, if you do want to join a monastery, a lot of them have rungs to becoming a monk, and there's probation periods, and I don't mean probation like crime. I mean probation like you're a probationer, meaning you're not fully vested, you're not fully accepted. It doesn't mean that they don't see you as, a human being. It's just you're not a part of their clique yet because you haven't proven yourself. You haven't undergone any testing grounds, so to speak. So there's a lot of that. They know a lot of people want to come and visit. They know a lot of people want to have the experience of a nature retreat where everything's all inclusive and all that. There's a lot of that. And they know this. I told the story before, but one of my subscribers years back when I started this channel was a monk at this monastery in the desert in California. And I had actually met him. And, I had ended up, because I wanted to visit, he wanted a ride back from Salt Lake City down to the desert in California. And I, at the time, was in Southern California. I decided to drive up and get him because I said, I've never been up there before. I want to check it out. And I don't regret it, but what I learned is that the dude was basically a welfare addict. He had a Section 8 apartment in Salt Lake City. He was on EBT. Yet he was talking all these highfalutin concepts about God and spirituality and Buddhism. And I looked at him and I was like, man, your actions and your words don't align at all. And he was taken aback. He was offended. I wasn't trying to attack him. I was just saying, man, you're kind of like a welterweight monk. You're not really a monk. You're just a dude who can't take care of himself, who's looking for an out. Yet you still want to enjoy modern society. You just don't want to have to pay into it. And that's not what the monastery is all about. And while these monks are nice people, they probably do resent those types of people for wanting to, basically use the monastery, use and abuse it as a nature retreat whenever they so choose. And that's why a lot of these monasteries, they'll let you, book a room or whatever, or a bed for a certain amount of days. Yet if it turns into you staying there for more than a couple weeks, that's when they want to sit down with you, have a talk, and be like, hey, look, what do you really want from this? Like, are you trying to become a monk? Are you a homeless person and you just don't want to pay rent and it's cheaper to live here? Like, what are you trying to do? You like the free continental monk breakfast? Like, what is it, you know? It is a good way to get out of, you know, the humdrum life. It is, you know. Matter of fact, I mean, you wouldn't imagine what types of people sometimes become monks. There's a monastery that I've been to before where the headmaster is a black guy. And, you know, not to stereotype, but if you didn't know him and if he wasn't in his robes, you'd think, man, this guy might be like a tough guy. This guy might be like a gangster. He looks like that. So you never can judge. You know, there's all types of people. I've never been to a seminary before, you know. I mean, when I lived in Arizona, there was a seminary very close to where I lived. And that was interesting, seeing the grounds, but I never actually, like, you know, I saw it from afar. I never actually went in. But, yeah, I mean, the monastic life is great, man, if you want to contemplate. And a lot of people think being a monk means, like, you live in your head and you neglect your body. But all you have to do, I mean, some Christian monks do get that reputation, but look at a lot of Buddhist monks, and they don't get that reputation. A lot of them take care of their bodies very well, too. Anytime I've spent time on those grounds, man, like, I've felt myself get healthier. And I normally eat pretty well myself. You know, I don't drink alcohol, I don't drink coffee, don't do drugs, none of that stuff. But even a stay in those environments will kind of kickstart something in you to want to be healthier. You don't really see sickly monks. You can see overweight or obese monks. They do exist. But besides that, I mean, they seem in good cheer. They seem healthy. You don't really see like diabetic monks who are, you know, having to be carted away to the hospital to get a limb amputated. You don't really see that, you know. The good thing about the monastic life is that you are not judged in the same way as you are in society, which is people, you know, what do people ask when they don't know you? First thing, what do you do? Because they're trying to gauge how much money you make, what sort of job you do, so they can gauge how much respect to give you or how much derision to give you. You know, it's a lot of people get sick of that really early on, you know, and for me personally, I mean, I couldn't care less, but sometimes if it's an annoying question to me, when somebody asks what I do, I'll literally just start talking about a hobby of mine, or I'll tell them I work at Taco Bell. Couldn't care less, you know, but in the monastic life, you don't have to worry about that. There's no jockeying for position. There's no, Friar Tuck just got a new Mustang GT. I got to go get a Challenger now. No, it doesn't work that way. You know, I remember when I lived in the desert in California, man, these Buddhist monks, every once in a while, they'd show up at Starbucks. Literally like 12 of them hopping out of a 1990-something Toyota Previa bubble van. And they come in, they have their Frappuccino, they talk with everybody, and they leave. They go about their business. And they're all wearing their saffron orange robes, you know. Those are the Buddhist monks. You know, a lot of the Christian monks, they have their black robes or whatever they wear. And, you know, again, it's when you're wearing the same thing, and it's not mandated they wear the same thing, but when you're wearing the same thing, a lot of the jealousy and envy goes away. It's kind of, when you go to these monasteries, it's kind of like an exercise, a small microcosmic exercise in socialism or communism, I guess, in a positive sense. But also at the end of the day, you see that the money's got to come from somewhere. You know, like all these monasteries, they do charge, even if it's donation-based, for staying there or visiting, or they've got gift shops, or they manufacture something. Like one of the ones I went to in Arizona, you know, they had livestock, so they would make their own milks and cheeses and, you know, different beverages and foods, you know. So they got to subsist some way. So even that tells you, you know, no matter, even if you go to the monastic route, you know, going into a pre-existing monastery, you're never going to get away from the natural truth that you've got to make some bread somehow. So that's another thing to consider. A lot of people think that going the monastic route means you'll never have to worry about making a dollar ever again. You'll never have to worry about maintenance of things before. But hey, In the monastery, a lot of them have electricity, man. Like maybe some outlets stop working, or breaker trips or burns out, or the heating element in something stops working, or whatever. I mean, there's work to be done. And typically, a lot of these monks, part of the responsibility is they're all groundskeepers. They'll all either have a responsibility towards the stewarding the grounds, or they'll switch roles. Maybe one person is, mowing the lawn one day, and then, next week they're tending to the garden, or they're, raking leaves or whatever, but there's firmly established expectations that you're not just going to be a taker. You're going to give back. You're going to help infuse the monastery with your positive human energy to make it a welcoming and beautiful place for the people who live there and for the people who visit. Because think about it this way. What's the most embarrassing thing for a monastery? A monastery that's in shambles, that's dirty, that's unkempt, that's got unruly or mean monks. That's bad press for their religion or their form of spirituality. It really is. So you're almost assured whenever you go visit a monastery, you're going to have a really nice time. Now, hey, I've been to Buddhist monasteries where the guys are eating their meals and they're drinking beer. I saw that with my own eyes at this Buddhist monastery in Yucca Valley, California, where that subscriber I was talking about was living at when he wasn't in Salt Lake City. I remember when I drove him back from Salt Lake City to the desert in California, I brought him to the monastery, and he made it seem like, oh, Steve, you might not want to hang out here too long because you're not a member. Like he tried to make it seem like they were so spiritual, and I was some just stupid, worldly, secular ant. And we got there, and the dudes are eating ramen. Spelt delicious. They were eating ramen. They were drinking Sing Sao beer, I think. They were drinking beer like they were throwing it back. And they were talking with me about, how they, one of the monks' hustles was like harvesting, like asteroid rocks or comet, I don't fucking know, rare rocks. And then he'd sell them to hippies and yuppies in these, hippie towns like Sedona, Arizona, or Taos, New Mexico. And he'd make a killing doing it. And so I'm looking at this acquaintance, my subscriber, and I'm like, dude, how fucking dare you, man? Like, there's nothing inordinately spiritual about this. It's just guys having a good time, drinking and eating together, which, that's spiritual in its own way, to be sharing meals with other people that you like. But don't try to make it seem like these guys are, walking on water and they're, curing the world's problems. They're not, they're just guys who realized, hey, working a job sucks, like living this grind sort of life sucks, like you'll actually notice in the next couple years, you're going to notice a lot of these Sigma grind set type Zoomers, the ones who don't off themselves, go in that route, the spiritual route, just, you definitely can see it coming in a couple years. It'll happen. It's just, I don't know. I got a lot of stories about different monks I've met, kind of like the Amish, they've got their quirks and their stories and all that, but it's one of those things where you're always going to be treated like you're going to be politely treated like an outsider until you take the vows. And the vows are serious, You are always allowed to walk away, but walking away and coming back, you're going to have a good reason. And I've heard stories before of monks, they'll get sick of the monastery life, they'll go worldly again, and then they'll want to don the robes, and they'll go to a different monastery where they think their reputation won't follow them. Now, who knows? Maybe there's some sort of communication network between monasteries like, hey, this monk is a bad apple. I have no clue. But I would imagine back in the day that worked pretty well. In the age of the internet, who knows? There might be some sort of black book or black list of monks gone wild, so to speak, or something. But a lot of things you can get in the monastic life, you can also create yourself. You can buy land. You can steward it. You can, choose to live with your friends, of course, when there's no underlying thing that binds you together like a spiritual framework, well, it's going to be hard to collect the bills at the end of the month, from people who are equally trying to evade the responsibilities of life and the world by pretending to be something holy, you know. Uh, you don't often see groups of monks at the grocery store, you know, and all that, you know. So, which means a lot of their food is grown too, you know. A lot of people probably don't have the skills for that or the desire to actually learn how to do that, you know, for all we know. So it is what it is, you know. It's there's good and bad to it, like anything else. I think a lot of people who are born in the world, they get sick and tired of it, they get burnt out, and they think they want to live monastically, but then they realize that maybe that's a little bit too extreme for them. Um, Me personally, for years I've thought about, you know, buying land and either going the monastic route, the 501c3 route, or 501c, I forget what it is. I was thinking about going that route, or either just, you know, buying some land and curating it, making it into some sort of kind of like nature retreat for people, or kind of like an entry level, hey, you want to live off grid? Come out here and learn the basics, you know? And I actually think I still will go that route. I'm actually presently looking at some land for sale near a lake by where I live. And um, it's about 50 acres of land. I'm trying to whittle the price down and let time pass to kind of let the owners realize that's probably the move. But if that happens, I'm probably going to do something of that sort. The main issue that monasteries, retreats, communes, the biggest problem they all have is vetting people, you know, is making sure that the bad apple doesn't come in and, like a worm, root through that whole apple. And so the apple looks fine on the outside, but the whole inside is rotten to the core and mushy, you know. That's the hardest part, is how you vet people, you know. And people are mutable, they're changeable, their emotions, you know, are typically in control of them. So just because you know a person for a second or for a day doesn't mean that's going to be the same person the next day too. So, and that's usually the undoing of a lot of communes and monasteries and such, you know. Now, of course, monasteries typically have a lot more going for it than communes, because communes are just kind of loosely banded together secular people having a go at it, whereas a monastery, as I said, typically built under like a religious or a spiritual underpinning. So there's a little bit more there to grasp onto. There's a little bit more rubber on that road, so to speak. Um, but like anything else, you know, I make fun of communes all the time because a lot of them fail. But I never look down on a person who tries, you know, like, it's great, go for it, you know. And at the best is it works out. The worst is you learn a valuable lesson about human nature and you become more careful with who you let around. Everybody says you are the sum of the 5 people you have around you the most. You know, I don't find any fault with that statement, but in a commune or a monastery, you are the sum of everybody who lives in those quarters. You are. If you have one person who, quote unquote, brings the vibe down, you know, you're going to be in a bad environment. And like most communes or monasteries, you know, it gets to the point where there is discord sown, there's, you know, smexual drama and assaults and crime, actually, you know, and it's actually more normal than anomalous, you know. And so that's another thing too you got to understand, is that sometimes when you think you're going that route, the world, you think you're trying to get away from the world, but the world will make itself known even in that monastery or commune, you know. Yeah, I remember one of the subscribers I met out here in Arkansas was a proponent of that, you know, Return to the Land group, which is basically a marshmallow nationalist group out in northeastern Arkansas. And you've got to be marshmallow complected to live there, you know, have certain beliefs and stuff. And then the whole deal is basically have big marshmallow families, you know. Me, I couldn't care less. I got nothing wrong with that. Do I want to live there? No. But I have no problem with that. If you want to live that way, obviously just, you know, don't go, you know, harming other people, you know. But they're having their problems too, you know. The biggest problem that they face is the leader, you know, the charismatic leader or whatever. He decided to start allowing the BBC, and not that type of BBC, but the BBC network and other interviewers and news outlets to come out and interview them. And I guess in his mind, he was thinking, well, this is going to get the word out. We're going to get more marshmallow people with the same values to come out here and plant their seed and create families. And maybe that did happen. Maybe they did get, a boost in viewership and a boost in people living there. But what they also got is a lot of bad press. And what also follows with that is, the FBI maybe taking a notice. Maybe they're not going to bust your door down, but they're going to take an interest and they're going to have a file on you, And quite frankly, a lot of these monasteries, it's the same way too. Even innocuous Buddhist monasteries, Christian monasteries, they're all going to have files on them by the FBI or wherever, whatever country you're in. Because those situations where groups of unrelated people live together are rife and ripe for, mind control and brainwashing and cult formations, And that's happened before where people think they're embarking on a Christian monastery or Buddhist monastery, then all of a sudden they're, drinking, purple Kool-Aid and they're wearing black Nikes, and wondering, why does my tummy feel funny? And why does everybody else in this room look like they're unalive, right? So that's the thing that happens. And the world will always intrude no matter where you are, no matter who you are, no matter where you go, no matter who you surround yourself with. And again, it just depends on who else is the personnel living at that monastery or commune. And if, as a group, they're able to kind of repel that sort of bad energy and they're able to, have the good enough PR to kind of, clean up some of the negativity that comes into the monastery, and then also, be able to make sure that the way the public views the monastery has not been marred. But do I recommend living that type of life? It depends on your temperament. It depends on what you've been through. It depends on what you want. Honestly, for a lot of worldly people, what you really want is you want to own land, you want to have privacy, and you want to be around your friends and your family. That's what most people want. Most people, if they're being honest with themselves, don't really need a monastic sort of life. What they need is greater human connection. And greater human connection can be made without being in the hallowed halls of an abbey or a monastery or whatever, And you don't have to create a commune. All you have to do is, I don't know. I mean, what some people do is they, get some money together, they buy a big piece of land and they parcel things off legally, and this is your piece and this is my piece and this is the common area, this is the courtyard or whatever where we all meet, Many people have tried it, many people fail. Some people do a good job. There's Dancing Rabbit Eco Village up in Missouri, they've been around a long time. They're known for being like a lot of, female to female attracted people, a lot of LGBTQ people up there. But they've been around for quite a while. I want to say they've been around for at least 20 years, if not longer. So you never can tell. You would think that, maybe there would be some sort of, in a situation like that with those types of people, there might be a lot of drama, right? But, seems to be working for them. And I guess they have a system in place for, probably booting people or rehabilitating people who are not any longer in alignment with their creed, their way of doing things, I would recommend visiting different monasteries. Typically, whatever state you live in, you'll be able to find one somewhere. Like I said, they'll either be Buddhist or Christian or, Greek Orthodox or whatever, and you can go and they'll typically allow on their website, you can kind of fill out a query form, if you want to visit, if you want to check it out, or if you want to stay there. Some monasteries are different than others. Some do open. I mean, some are very welcome to like dialogue. Like if you want to, talk about doctrine or whatever with the monks, some are very open to that. Some are very against that. Typically, in my experience, the Christian ones are very open to dialogue. The Buddhist ones, sometimes not so much. To them, they're kind of leery if you're not like you haven't already taken the vows, you haven't already proven yourself to be, more than a savage animal on two legs, But the Christian ones, typically, in my experience, they're fine with, talking about doctrine, or the Christian ones, in my experience, have been more therapeutic. They seem that way. They kind of double that way as like a counseling center in a sense. They'll help you with your issues or whatever. The Buddhist ones are more like look but don't touch, kind of. Not all of them, but many of the ones that I've been to are kind of look but don't touch. It's a little bit more like going to a small town in the South. You're not from there. Everybody knows you're not from there. Yeah, they'll sell you stuff, but they're not going to invite you to their town gatherings. That's kind of what it is. Anyways, I'm going to get out of here. I need to go get in the sun, and I need to go do some tiling in my guest shower today because, like I said, the weather's going to be amazing. So I'm going to do that. Thesoftspokenshaman@gmail.com is the place to hit me up. Like I said, I don't really interact with subscribers unless they're, wanting, a consultation, they have questions, they want to check out my books, or be part of the Discord community. That's really all I deal with nowadays, so please be understanding of that, and I'll talk to you later. See ya.